Hello and welcome to the Empowered Curiosity podcast. I've got a repeat guest on today, and she is such a lovely human to hang out with, and I'm just so excited that we get to just share her voice here today. So Rachel Root is somebody that I met. I don't know how long ago it's been now. Like we've been buds for a couple of years now. We met in Vancouver, but she is a women's health coach and also a recent graduate of Business Alchemist Mentorship. And I wanted to invite you on because A, I want to share your work with all of my people, but also just wanting to share your story around why you joined BAM, why that was so helpful for you, and I have a suspicion that we'll get into some conversation around inner child work just because there's a lot of overlap in what I do and what you do in that space. So, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited. I love any chance I get to hang out with you. So very happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, Rachel, maybe let's start out with a little bit of a context of who you are, what your work is about, because I think that that goes into our conversation of like why BAM? So let us know.
Yeah. Well, I do work in women's health. I'm a fertility and menstrual health expert. I really help women with lifestyle medicine based in East Asian medicine and functional medicine and nervous system care. And the background story is that, I had been working in a clinic and kind of got myself into what felt like burnout at the time. And my husband and I decided to move to Berlin, Germany. And I had this fantastic time to start over and really create this new business, this online business I had been dreaming about the whole time I was working in San Francisco. But I had a lot of fear that I was just going to build something again that led me to feeling as burnt out and as exhausted as I was before.
Mhm.
I was somebody who worked when I was in high school, worked through my undergrad, worked in grad school, and there just wasn't a lot of time to really care for myself in the way that I wanted to. And it was always ironic because I was, trying to do all of this so I could learn how to care for myself and others. And um, I was hoping that once I was well into my acupuncture practice that things would be different. But I think living in a big city and just the pressure that there is with, making all your overhead and seeing as much clients as you need to see, it was just maybe a lot for my nervous system and in my energy levels for kind of who I
Yeah.
am. So what I'm building now is something that, is I think more helpful for the client and for myself.
hmm hmm And I want to just take a moment and pause with this like idea of burnout. And so I'm sure you see this so much in your client base now, but like, can you give us just a sense of like what burnout might have felt like for you and how it shows up in your clients and how it affected your business as you're trying to start something new?
Yeah, like I said, I think that in order to start a practice, it's a lot of energy output. And, you end up continuing that energy output once you start to see a lot of clients. And um, for various reasons too, I didn't have things really set up in place for me like I do these days to really be able to recover that energy fully and care for my nervous system in the way that it needs to be cared for. At the same time, I think that I was still operating in a lot of subconscious like trauma responses of perfectionism and just saying yes, overdoing things, not having the boundaries that I needed to have to care for
Yeah.
myself in all the right ways. And I do see this in clients all the time, and this is something that's really important to work out not only like why you're burning yourself out, how to care for yourself in a way that truly is restorative. And I really had to teach myself those things in order to be able to clearly teach them to others.
Yeah.
But there was still fear within my business that I was going to be like get back to this imbalanced place again. And so working with you was a way for me to really work through those things with somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've mentioned now a couple of times of like, I needed to take care of my nervous system. And I think that a lot of times people do sort of equate, quote unquote, burnout as being like, I'm tired, I'm overgiving, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, I always say yes to things, I don't know how to say no to things. But I think that your body, and I don't mean just your body, but like everyone's bodies, um, is
Mm.
constantly trying to give us feedback of like, okay, what's the limit here? You know? Um, and what is the point at which this feels like a good thing to be doing, and then like one more thing on your schedule and it's no longer a nourishing thing for you? And I know that for myself, my key markers in which my body tries to communicate with me is like headaches. Like I get
Mm.
headaches like super super easily. And I've also heard from like people digestive issues. And I imagine that in your line of work, just because I also worked in fertility medicine for a long time, the body's trying to say, hey, I'm stressed out. We're maybe doing a little bit too much. And and instead of being like, okay, I'm going to try to fix my menstrual cycles, or I need a cure for my infertility. A lot of times when we dig underneath the surface, there is this underlying layer of stress, and it's really your body trying to say, like, hey, I need a little bit of care and support here. And I just sort of want to
Yeah,
like lay that on too.
absolutely. Yeah, and just another sign for me too. I think I really notice headaches is a very common one, but I notice a lot of maybe dissociated behavior in myself. I really get when I get run down, I want to do things like just kind of like numb out and scroll on the internet or, kind of catatonically lay on the couch for a while.
Yeah,
And you can do these things in a way that are truly restorative to you, or you could be doing them in a way that's just like, I overdid it and now I'm like in this hypoarousal state that's not and not really caring for yourself in a way that you're going to restore and get out of that, just doing things in sort of like a um this is all I can do right now
yeah,
situation.
right. I was just talking about this with a client of mine this last week, because I think that when people are processing a lot, and this client had gone through like some major life transitions, some like big stuff with work and relationships and stuff like that. And she was like very clearly processing a ton of stuff. Our natural response in that moment is actually to take a nap. I think that a lot of
Hmm.
times we have a tendency to think, oh, if I'm falling asleep in the middle of the day, it means that I'm lazy, or we might have even been told that we're lazy. And for a lot of us, actually, because we process so much subconsciously, if you go through like these big major life changes and you feel sleepy and tired and you want to take a nap, like that's actually a normal part of your nervous system taking care of you. And what I found interesting
Right.
is that with this client, we were able to differentiate like what is a process nap versus like what is a disassociation nap. And they feel really, really different in her body. She was saying things like, when I wake up from a process nap, I feel refreshed. Like I can, sort of like I categorized a bunch of stuff and now I'm ready to like take on the rest of the day, even if it was just like a 10-15 minute nap. And then with like a disassociation nap, which is a trauma response, even though from the outside it might look the same as like, oh, you're going down for a nap. Um, the trauma response to that for her was like, it feels heavy. When I wake up, it feels like I just need to go back to sleep. It might, go into like a 3-4 hour nap in the middle of the day and you can't feel replenished after it. So I think that when we start learning to listen to our nervous systems in this way, we start being able to like differentiate, oh, this is actually me disassociating versus this is me
Hmm.
like doing a healthy thing for my body.
Yeah, that's why it's so empowering to like get to know yourself in that way and really understand your body from this interoceptive piece, which takes a little bit of slowing down and these check-ins all the time and making sure that you're doing things in an intentional way. So helpful.
And um, and so I'm curious. So you were working as an acupuncturist in San Francisco for a bit. Um, got super burnt out, and then we met at this sort of transitional phase for you when you were like, I've had this idea of like wanting to do an online business for a while, and there was this like gap. So what was in that gap? Like, what were the sort of stories that you were telling yourself? What kind of fears were coming up for you? Just give us like a glimpse into what that world in that transition was like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure that you've had many businesses, so I'm sure that you
Mm-hmm.
remember this, but you know, it's it's easy for the monkey mind to take over when you're starting something because it's a huge investment in time and it's usually starting off an investment with your personal finances too. So there's a lot of um, working through scarcity mindset. Like, am I what I'm going to put in? Am I going to get out of this? Am I going to be able to handle everything that I set up? There's so much to learn about when you're a business owner. How do you reach out to people? How to take payments? How to like do the scheduling? And most of us in these professions, we're just interested in helping people with our craft and we love what we do. And most of the people within BAM and people I know in this, it's like business it feels like something that is like nails on a chalkboard, like crap. This is the part that I don't
Yeah.
want to do. I don't want to spend my time on this. So, you know, within my former practice, I was always working under the umbrella of a bigger clinic. So my responsibilities from a business aspect were, somewhat limited. There are other people that were taking care of a lot of the other parts of it. So it felt like there was a big learning curve that I needed to like, I guess, woman up and take on. And coming from a place of, I guess, feeling burnout in the past, it it took some self-work to be able to get to the place where you're like, okay, I can take this on now and I can attempt to figure all of this out um without letting the fear
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
over.
And I want to say here that the fear of burnout is a really common fear that I hear from people who want to get into entrepreneurship and start their own businesses. And it's not anyone's fault because the way that we've been taught this is what business looks like, it looks like burnout, you know? It looks
Mm, hmm.
like you have to ascribe to a certain kind of marketing. It looks like you have to start overriding your own needs so that like you're working outside of the regular hours that you want to set for yourself. It looks like overgiving. It looks like scarcity mindset. Like that's kind of the model that we've all been shown. And one of the things that I want to inspire in people is that that is the way capitalism has conditioned us to look at businesses, and it's not a sustainable way to look at businesses. And when we start looking at businesses the way that you look at nature and the way that you look at the human body, which is we run on cycles. Like, why would your business be any different from these things that are leading our bodies and our lives on a daily basis, you know? And so, when you start looking at your business through seasons, you know that there's going to be a winter season when you might be slowing down a bit. And then you might go through spring seasons where you're launching something, and to be really intentional about like how to use your energy in all those different seasons. I feel like even just having the context of like, oh, I'm a little more internal this month in my business versus I'm a little more external this month in my business, and preparing my nervous system
Hmm.
to be like, oh, I'm going to go through a launch. So that means that I might need to replenish a little bit the month before and make sure that I have a lot of time sort of set aside for self-care during the month of my launch, so that I know that I can do that in a very ethical and genuine and authentic way without trying to invite people into a container where I'm feeling scarce, you know? So I think that that's an
Hmm.
important thing to note here, is that um, that the burnout or the fear of burnout is, you know, is us being traumatized by capitalist business.
Yeah, that is a lot of the like wisdom and brilliance you bring into the BAM mentorship, because really teaching us that it's okay to have these downtimes. It's okay to, or not only is it okay, it's kind of essential that you need to plan ahead in a way that's like you're going to have times where you're kind of pushing out a lot of things. So you need to plan ahead to also have time to like slow down and recover afterwards, so that you're looking at the long game and not just, growth, growth, growth for growth's sake. And I had a lot of, I guess, internalized capitalism and internalized hustle culture that I was really struggling with. There was a part of me that wanted to feel brave and empowered enough to do things in my own way, but I guess some fear that I could be able to pull that off. So that's why I was very attracted to you as a business coach, because I saw you doing your work this way. And I also saw the like freedom, and I guess the energy was very flowy of what you were putting out there, the offering that you were giving, the way that you were speaking to your community. It You definitely seemed from an outside view very like um unencumbered, if that's the right word. And I wasn't feeling that way, and I was not exactly sure why that is. I felt like, oh God, I just did all this internal work on myself. I've recovered from my burnout. I'm really clear in my mission. I'm really clear on what I want to do. But I felt within myself, and you were such a beautiful mirror for me. I was like, that's where I want to get. And so why not work with somebody who's already there and sort of gobble up a little bit of the magic that they have worked out for themselves? So that was fun. And I definitely want to say that if you are an entrepreneur, if you're in business, if you read the Tao Te Ching or learn a little bit about the Tao, or work with Kat, then this will make your life so much easier. Even if you don't understand it at first, or even if it's just is words on a page, like at some point it will become a part of you, and you will be able to internalize that and flow a little better, and be more seasonal. I think that
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
point.
And I remember having this conversation with you in one of our one-on-ones of like you looking at my business and being like, I wish I was there. I wish, you know, I had gotten there as quickly as you had gotten there. And um, I had to like sort of show you the story behind the veil a little bit, because the reality is that this isn't my first business, you know, that I've run on my own. I've run two others successfully. And so I had done a lot of the things that you talk about in terms of like burning yourself out and overgiving and being like overly like being a bit of a perfectionist. And, I had sort of run through those things through my acupuncture practice, and also my calligraphy business. And so by the time I launched Empowered Curiosity in 2020, I was really, really clear on like how I didn't want to run my business. And so I think that a lot of times
Mm,
people look at folks out there who have these like amazing practices and they're living these like very free lives. And yes, like, I want to inspire people and cut down on the time that you have to spend in that space, because I don't want you to flail around for 10 years like I did. I want it to be like a year and you learn some good stuff so that you can move your business forward within that year, instead of like flailing around like I did for 10. And but you also
yeah.
can't like cut out that part of the story. And I want to normalize that part of the story of like there's a ton of like Instagram business coaches and like influencers out there, and it's so easy to see like the tip of the iceberg, and a lot of times that's what people are selling, is the tip of the iceberg. Like, let me show you how you can make 10K in 12 weeks, or let me show you my sales funnel that you can teach to other people so that you can, it's almost this like weird pyramid scheme type sort of energy in, in the Instagram business world. But I really want to
Hmm.
normalize that, like, you're seeing the tip and be inspired by the tip, but also like find your own ways there, in more efficient ways, instead of
Hmm.
like just seeing that and being like, oh, but she's got $1 million business and I should be able to do that too within a year.
Right. I mean, that's another reason why I felt, excited to work with you and honestly very turned off by the other things that were out there because I I have done, business classes in the past and they have been sort of like a machine, it's like they tell everybody the same thing and it's a little bit shamey if you can't do it all. And for you, I knew that you would respect me as an individual, understand that I'm going to like want to, yeah, soak up all your goodness and magic and all the things that you've worked through. But I'm also going to
Yeah.
have to do it my way, and I'm going to have to do it in a way that feels sustainable to me. And also, I'm just going to have my own
Yes.
ideas about things. And of course, like entrepreneurs make a ton of mistakes. That's how we learned. And you can learn something from somebody and not do it and fail, be like, ah, I should have listened to her. But it feels so much safer to work with somebody who's like, here's what I have to offer. Let's talk through it and see like how this fits for you or what might not fit for you. And like really you get to really give that person like
Yeah.
their sovereignty and say like let's talk about what lights you up and what excites you, what works for you, and how can you get out there in a way that's really safe and nourishing for you and not just like do it
Yeah.
because you have to do it. That was just the language that I
Yeah.
was so turned off by, and that's not the kind of coach that you are, which I really felt that and appreciated that a lot.
Thank you for that. um, I think that strategy only works when you feel safe. And so it's not to say that the strategies that other people are teaching, don't work. They certainly could and have worked for them and likely works for a lot of their clients. But, I look for patterns. And one of the patterns that I keep seeing over and over again is, if we go back to that gap for you, that gap where the fear was living, that gap where, I can envision, what this online business can look like, but I don't know how to get myself there. In that gap, um, are a lot of scared little kids. Um, and
Yeah,
yeah, and I think
for
that
sure.
that's um, where we have to start having these conversations that are deeper than just download this sales script and, I'm going to spoon feed you this strategy. Because that little kid who was scared of burnout, because that kid has seen burnout in you before, who is living inside of you, like really, really just needed to be safe and needed to be held and needed to be told that it could be different this
Mm,
time.
yes. Yeah, I'm so glad that we're talking about safety because that is something that you know, I am lifting you up for a very good reason right now, but that is something that you have brilliance in and a level that I've just not really experienced a lot before. And I have to say, my biggest breakthroughs within going through BAM were in our one-on-one sessions because you have this ability to create such a safe container that I think I told you this before. Like, I would leave our sessions feeling like, do I feel safer with Kat than I do with my own self? Because things would, like, my inner children would come out in these sessions and say all these things that I didn't even have awareness about, which was mind blowing to me. I think I spent 80% of our sessions crying, but you just like held me so safely. And I had no idea in business coaching that this would be a place I needed to cry. Like, I did not expect that. I was a little embarrassed by it, but I just wanted to trust the process and I wanted to just like let it happen because you were there on the other side encouraging all of it to show up. Like, I'm getting teary just thinking about it right now because it was so beautiful the way that you were able to hold that space for me and let all my
Mm-hmm.
scared little inner children talk. And then I'd leave and be like, oh my God, I didn't even know I was worried about that until like until I had this
Yeah.
one-on-one time with Kat. And now that I have this awareness, now that my inner children feel safe enough to say, hey, what
Mm-hmm.
about this? Hey, what about this? Hey, what about this? Then that gives me something that I can actually work with instead of just this like, I don't know why everything is feeling extra hard. I don't know why this like phone call to this like tax accountant feels like my life will
Yeah.
end if I do, just these little things that you're just like, I think it's easy to judge yourself a little bit and not create that safety for yourself and spend the time slowing down and being like, why is this hard for you? What is coming up? But you can do this in a way that I don't know, nobody else can do, is my opinion.
Well, I think that a lot of times, like, we have this block around allowing our inner children to come out and speak their truths because we are afraid, we feel shame, we feel guilt around their voices. And it can really be as simple as someone saying, it's totally understandable that you feel that way, you know? And it just dissolves that
Right.
guilt and
Yeah.
shame in a way that, you know, that our little kids on the inside didn't get to be held when we were growing up. Like I get teary eyed talking about it too because like I feel like as over the years as I've held my own inner child, it's been the only reason why I've been able to hold other people's inner kids, is because my own kid
Yes.
feels really
Yeah.
safe and is like, oh, I see you, 5 year old, like let me come out and just hang out with you for a little bit too. And when we start normalizing these things instead of like getting just plastering a layer and layer and layer of shame on top of it, then I think we get to actually see the most human versions of ourselves. And from that space, we can show up and invite the perfect clients that you are stoked to work with into your offerings. Because then you're not showing up with this like veneer of like, I need to look perfect, or I need to say things in this way, or I need to look like I'm
Mm-hmm.
cool, or if they don't sign up with me, then it says something about me. And of course they're not signing up with me because on the inside, like, I feel like I'm shit. So, like, when you can
Hmm.
hold all those like kids, and I've got like a 2 year old and a 3 year old and a 4 year old, like all the way up until like my 30s. I have all those versions of me as well. If we can hold all those parts of us with compassion, um, then it opens up your own capacity to hold space for other people.
100%. It really does. And
Yeah.
it's a never-ending process. The more that you do it, the more that you give, the scared and parts of yourself that felt unlovable or not worthy or scared, like as much love as you can, the more power you have to not only hold space
Yeah.
for others, but do scary things. And you have to do both of those. If you're an
Yeah.
entrepreneur in the healing business, this is something that you don't get to run away from.
Yeah.
You have to face it.
Yeah.
It's going to come out one way or another, and it's
Yeah.
better if you do it
Yeah.
sooner than later
Yeah. And
in our experience.
I think I love this work because I use business as the portal to be able to talk to all these scared parts of you. And like, I'm not teaching you how to become a better practitioner, but I think that by you being able to hold space for your inner 5 year old, it makes you a better practitioner as like a really nice side effect. Because when somebody comes in with their scared kid
Hmm.
who's like tantruming and freaking out and wondering, like in your line of work, I'm envisioning like, why can't I just get pregnant? What the fuck is wrong with my period?
Yeah,
I must be getting old, and therefore, like all these stories that just run wild in our heads. Like
exactly.
it opens up that capacity for you to hold space better because you aren't going to be triggered because your inner 5 year old feels safe.
Yes. And this is why the work never ends because, I had done that
Yeah,
work with becoming a practitioner. I didn't want my
absolutely.
stuff to come out in those spaces before, and it was so important in that space. However, I was shocked how much this stuff showed up again when I started this new scary thing, right? This next level scary thing, which is being like having my own business and having somebody help you hold space for these new fears, these different things that are coming up that you haven't really had to quite face yet, or it every time you kind of level up and do something else scary, they're going to get active again, even if you thought you had done all this work around you creating safety for them
Yeah,
in a different way. Then they're going to come back and have a
yeah,
lot to say the next time you do something scary
yeah.
or a little bit out of your comfort zone.
So I'm curious how you would answer this question um, before BAM and then also after BAM. So if you want to like sort of like put yourself back in the shoes um, of who you were before we started working together in BAM, what role does emotions
Mhm.
play in business?
Oh God, everything. I mean, emotions are on both sides of business, right? I mean, we buy things for emotional reasons, and on the inside of business, we make business decisions really easily with emotions. And unless we know how to feel our emotions, digest our emotions, process our emotions, look at our emotions, we're not going to be making probably the always the best decisions for
Yeah,
ourselves if we don't have those skills. Um, I think that, like I said, I mean, we're both Asian medicine practitioners, but I felt this level of chi stagnation when every time I approached, you know, doing working one on one with clients, that like those things were going well, but there were all these other extra elements I wanted to add to my business and things that I wanted to work on. and doing anything more than what I was doing already,
Yeah.
I felt stagnated. I felt stuck. I felt like I had to override things in order to work on it. And I couldn't really get there on my own. But working with you, I felt like just freeing up those fears, talking about the things that I needed to talk about with somebody that I didn't even necessarily know what they were. I just knew that it was something. Like those emotions being kind of free and unstuck and unstagnated changed the way that I do anything in my business from an emotional perspective. Like I can now do it with the emotions that I was hoping to be able to do them with before, which is a lot of joy, which is a lot of love, which is a lot of excitement, which is a lot of intention. Where before it was like, I have to do this thing because I said I would, and I just have to get it done, and it
Yeah.
feels bad, and you don't want it to feel bad. You're creating something for yourself
Yeah.
and others that you want to feel amazing, but sometimes it just doesn't. And yeah, there's times where still there's parts of the business where yeah, it doesn't feel amazing, but at least you can do it with you can process those emotions and do it with a little bit more gentleness and compassion and clarity and
Yeah.
understanding, and not just overriding
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
beating yourself up
And
through
I just
it.
want to point out this like overriding piece. I'm so glad that you mentioned that is another aspect that the toxicity of capitalism leaks its way into spiritual entrepreneurship. It's like as soon as we start like unpacking all the things that we unconsciously say yes to, like when we start up a business in this modern world that we start up a business in, and we just take that entire package without questioning, what comes in that package. I feel like override is one of those things that we are taught that we need to do. And to me, when we start bringing the somatics online of like understanding your nervous system, understanding your stress responses, and understanding your emotions and feelings, like even if we end up doing the exact same thing that you know, were gonna do before, but you do it with the intentionality of like, oh, I've looked into what this feels like in my body. I've looked into what this feeling is. I've looked into, what my inner child is saying about this. It comes with a totally different flavor. And so, like to me, like a tangible example
Mm.
would be, you calling one of the things that you were scared of is like you calling an accountant or like somebody who's going to help you set up taxes. And, ultimately at the end of the day, like
Hmm.
that is an important call to make. But if you had done it from this place of like override, of like, I'm just going to feel a fear and do it anyway, or this is something that I should do, so I'm just going to do it, I'm just going to dot, dot, dot. Anytime somebody starts their, statement with, I'm just going to, like, I'm like, ooh, that's a place to start working, right? Versus like what you were able to do is like sit with the feeling, sit with how that was showing up in your body, ask your inner children, like, what's going on? Why do we feel threatened? And ultimately, at the end of the day, you're going to make that call, but it comes from a very, very different, like, nuanced sort of feeling and space.
Yeah, and
Exactly.
that is burnout prevention right there, because you can go through your day overriding your feelings and emotions and just getting stuff done. And at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
that's gonna rebound and you're gonna feel terrible. Or you could get just as much done in a way that has I don't know, yeah, soothing your inner children, having compassion, remembering your whys, bringing your love in, bringing your intention into it, and, you know, saying I'm afraid, but it's just, that I'm going to be here with my inner children while I'm doing it, and just remind myself that I'm safe, that it's just a phone
Yeah.
call. I know I'm not the only person who gets, sorry, who gets anxiety over making certain phone calls, and it feels really irrational. And you tell maybe somebody else who doesn't have that fear, and they're like, oh, just do it. But
Yeah.
it's because they don't know, they just don't understand and they don't know. So working with somebody who realizes that trauma is a part of everything that we do in life, and our inner children are with us no matter what we do, and our nervous system needs to be soothed when we do scary things, even if the scary thing looks
Yeah.
completely irrational to somebody else. It needs to be compassionately done if you're not, and if you still want to
Yeah.
feel good at the
Yeah.
end of your day, I
I
believe.
just want to shift the focus a little bit because I think that this is a good way to sort of transition and talk about like where the Venn diagram of both of our work sort of intersects here. Because I too used to be a fertility specialist. I worked as an acupuncturist for several years, and this concept of override is like such an important one to talk about in women's health. And, you know, again, this is where I
Hmm.
just can nerd out about business being a spiritual practice for like the end of time. But if you just think about all of the ways in which the challenging things in your life can be spiritual practices, I feel like that changes and shifts
Hmm.
the perspective on so many things. And I think a lot of the things that you're talking about here in terms of override can be
Hmm.
applied to women's health because we are told to override so many things in order to get the result that we want, in order to get the baby, to not inconvenience people. Yeah, yeah,
Lose the weight, or yeah, whatever it is. It's just, it's well, medicine, as we've been doing it for a while in the West, is really set up. And I mean, I worked in China too. I can't say that that was much better to witness. There's a lot of overriding there too, but it's kind of based in this like, you have this thing, here's the thing, do it, and if you don't, you won't get the result. But it's so much more than that. It's really about, um, if that thing feels scary, or if that thing feels bad, or if you're not sure what that thing is and you're just told to do it, and you're doing it and it feels bad, and you're still feeling bad and you're doing it, and nobody's explaining to you that like it's okay to
yeah,
like slow down. It's okay if you need more time to be able to, take that hormone shot, or um, you know, get your weekly acupuncture, whatever it is, we should be slowing things down a little bit so that what we're doing feels like a hell yes to our body, and not like a
yeah,
I need to be
yeah.
doing this or else. And the same goes
Mm-hmm.
in business.
And I think that
Absolutely.
this is where, like, for me, um, I would get so upset and so mad at the Western way of approaching health and medicine, and particularly when it comes to women's health and medicine, is there's not a lot of informed consent, and there's not a lot of
Hmm.
like even being informed, I would say. And so I don't know how many women I've talked to who have been through, their fertility treatments and don't even understand the medications that they're taking. They don't understand the mechanics and the side effects and the potential, in the case of like Clomid, a very common medication that's given, how that can over time actually thin the uterine lining, and so then it's going to do the opposite thing that we want to help you have a baby. And so like there's so many things um, that are left out as a form of manipulation and as a form of control over your own body. And I think that doing this kind of work of like, sitting with your feelings and sitting with your body and understanding, these signals that your body is giving you, like it gives you a space that you can ask more questions. It gives you a space where you can start like being like, oh,
Yeah.
hey, like I can do a little bit more research on this, or I can ask someone like Rachel, or I can talk to other people who have had experiences, so that even again, same situation of like, even if you do end up taking the Clomid, like you feel safer doing that because you have all the information that you need to feel safe with that.
Yeah. And exploring, if you don't feel safe, like taking the time to figure out why that is. I know that, I've probably done an unintentional harm in the past because you learn how to create healthier cycles or hormones or fertility, and you know that movement and nutrition and these things are really big pieces. And when you're informing somebody on that, and then they're coming back the next week and you're asking like, did you make these changes? And they say no, then it's easy
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
just
yeah.
like, why not? Don't you want to get pregnant? And in the beginning, I was realizing like, God, I don't like being sort
Yeah.
of the coach in this way. What I want to do is have enough time to slow down and be like,
Mm-hmm.
let's explore why this is hard for you. Let's see why like caring for yourself feels hard or scary. So much of it is, you know, so complex as far as like what we think we deserve, what we think we have time for, what we think we can ask for, not asking for our needs to be met. And these things need space to be looked at and cared for too. Not just like you need to do this. It's like this would be really helpful. And if you're having a hard time doing it, let's talk about the whys. This is the way that we can actually make change that feels sustainable,
Yeah.
that feels loving, that feels like real care. Um, and yeah, I have to say, it's the exact same thing in business. You could try to, you can say, like, I want to make X amount of dollars, and here's the things that I need to do. And you could just like hammer yourself into trying to do them every
Yeah.
day and then punish yourself for not doing them, and kind of get in this vicious cycle, just like we do when we're trying to eat better or we do when we're trying to exercise more. It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
It's not real care. It's more harm. And um,
Yeah.
we can try to do better, and we can try to learn from the past
Yeah.
ways we were doing things that
And
was
this
more
is where I
harmful.
feel like I mean, every single person who struggles with fertility or their menstrual cycles needs to have you in their back pocket. And I think that this is where our work parallels each other so beautifully, is that you have a whole very well informed toolbox of how, like you work so beautifully with all the tools that you have, and you know that before you ask the how, you have to ask why first. And I think that that's where like we approach our
Mhm.
work very similarly, because it's like, yeah, I can inundate you with how to write a sales page, how to like, create copy, but as those fears are coming up for you, if we just keep hammering on like you just need to do this, then you're actually doing more harm than good. And I think that this is
Mhm.
where we start turning the tide,
Mhm.
not just
Mhm.
in business, which is, my zone of genius, but also in your zone of genius, which is in healthcare. And I think that the more and more people who are approaching their work from a why before how sort of understanding, I think that that's where we start untangling these toxic ways that I don't even know what to call it, because I think it goes even further than capitalism. It's sort of like toxic.
I think there's a little bit of a like patriarchal umbrella of like, we there was a lot of overriding in order to say like go to war. I mean, can you imagine? It's not in our human nature to like go shoot somebody, but you have to learn how to override your human nature in order to do something that
Yeah.
you really, it's not in our nature to want to do. And I think that there was a lot of overlap with the start of medicine in the way that modern medicine is now. You know, a lot of those people
Mm,
were trained in order to care for soldiers, and it was within that complex. And I could go into the long history of medicine and the witch trials and all that because it really does show us where we've gotten today as far as, you know, the way that we do medicine. And of course, we've gotten a lot of amazing things from it as far as technology and but we have to start looking at all the ways in which
yeah.
we are doing harm in the system as it was set up for us. And I think, yeah, that's why medicine these days is
Yeah.
starting to shift a
Yeah.
little bit more into
Yeah.
alternative
Oh
practices
my God, I can
because
nerd out
people
with you
are
about like the
hungry for it.
history of all this. Um, the piece that I think is important to note here is that when you say yes to alternative ways of looking at medicine, of this concept of why before how, this idea of like being informed and not overriding in order to just get the result, that doesn't mean that we are also saying no to the really wonderful things that the system has brought us. You know, we can still say yes to the technology, but do it
Yeah.
in a more empowering way and do it in a way that actually makes you feel like it's bolstering you and building up a connection between you and your body and helping you find answers. But I think that a lot of
Hmm.
times, because this debate between like modern medicine and alternative, like it can seem so black and white, and really in all these places where it does feel black and white, I think it's important to add nuance and say yes and say an empowered yes to the things that you want to say yes to. So if we can, take this concept of not overriding and using tools for the tools that they are, like, to me, when you feel safe within your nervous system, then you can actually pick and choose the tools that you want to use in business, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, you when you feel safe in your nervous system and your brain is working in a different way. You're way more connected to your wisdom. You're way more likely to say, "Oh, this is going to have an impact with my clients," or "This is going to have an outreach in the way that I want to outreach." Um, and you can make decisions based on what is actually going to make a difference, or what's going to feel really good to you, or what's going to feel really good to the client, and not just, oh, I have to do this because somebody said I had to do it. And if I don't do it, then my business is going to fail and I'm not going to make enough money this month. And it's a whole different way of approaching everything when you can care and regulate before you make decisions. It's all the difference. And you can do that for yourself to a large extent. But if you're working with somebody who is also, knowledgeable and understands the nervous system and understands the way that sometimes we can feel, out of balance when we're making these decisions or really fear-based or scared and they can kind of slow you down and maybe recognize that you're doing things in a way that um, is are in these sorts of out of your comfort zone places in your nervous system and help you realize that so that you can sometimes we're not
Yeah.
it's not always easy to be aware that you're doing that. I think at one point you pointed that out to me and it was like head explosion because I had been in this place where I was really like stage momming my business, like really trying to whip her into shape and get her stage ready. And I don't think I had that much awareness around how much I was like in these parts of my nervous system that were like hyper aroused when I was making these decisions. And you just sort of like very lovingly put it to me, like, I think that you're trying to create safety through your business right now, and you're not creating safety within yourself. And I was like, oh my God, hello. Yes. Okay. I need to just like slow my roll here for a second and find some calmness around this. And yeah, everything felt so much better once you just pointed that out to me. Um, it's something we can definitely learn to do for ourselves, but we sometimes need that mirror. We need that reflector to say, hey, wait a second, like I see you right here, and it
Yeah.
doesn't seem
And
like you're
I
coming
think
from a place of
especially
regulation.
if you are
So
somebody who's a
helpful.
service-based entrepreneur, because your service can feel so personal. It can feel like it's like a part of you. It's so hard to like actually look at your stuff from like a
Hmm.
neutral space. And so, this is where I've had coaches myself
Hmm.
when it came to like my relationships and other things that I felt like I could not just like take my own story out of it and look at it just from a nuts and bolts, this is
Hmm.
what's happening, like unemotional space. Like that's where I feel like it's really helpful to have a mirror and just help you, reflect
Hmm.
on, okay, so how much of this is story and how much of this is true, and to move towards really making decisions based on truth instead of story. Um, and so I'm curious if
Hmm.
somebody was considering BAM right now, they've listened to this podcast and they're like, oh my gosh, Rachel's story is very similar to my
Hmm.
story. How would you speak to that person to help them make a decision, whether that's a yay or a nay decision?
Yeah, well, I think that especially if you're somewhat new in business, it can feel a little bit scary to spend the money to invest in a program or a coach or something like this because, there's so much you want to do. But in the long run, it will save you so much because you'll have the time to help somebody build a really beautiful, safe, and like loving foundation within your business. Be able to share tools that they have figured out the really hard and terrible ways that we've had to, fail and come out of it. And, that saves you a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of headache. But what Kat is really brilliant at is also building community. And if you are somebody, especially with an online business, it can feel terribly lonely, even for an introvert. I could feel very isolating. And you also get to be around other people who are where you are and working through the things that you're working with. It makes you feel less crazy. It makes you feel less alone. It makes you feel really empowered. You learn from each other. You learn from Kat, and you, like I said, really get that solid foundation of your whys so you can move into your house in a way that is really safe within your nervous system and clear within your head and aligned with your spirit. And it's worth it. It's super
Oh,
worth it
thank you
to
so
give
much for
yourself that
that.
gift.
It's been it's been so much
Well,
fun.
thank you for the work
I
that you
really
do.
do truly love BAM. Like it's such a fun container, and it's like especially seeing where you and several of the band members were at the beginning of our time together and how much growth has happened in that space. I mean, it's just
It's been incredible to witness. Like it has been so much fun. Even like there's been two groups, separate groups you had in BAM. And so I haven't like really got to meet everybody, but I've got to see from afar like their story a little bit and the people within our group. There has been some incredible transformations, so many aha moments. Like it feels magical. It feels full of spirit and life,
Mm,
and you deserve that. I think if you're listening to this right now, and give yourself that gift
yeah,
because
it really is. And
it's
I think you
great to
touched on
be
something that I
around
don't really even get
magic.
a chance to talk about that much, which is, the group work and the magic that unfolds within the group container is just like I can't even try to direct that. All I can do is like hold the space and you all just flow in with each of your individual pieces of magic and um, just create something bigger than what I can put into a container. So I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for all the women who said yes to this container that is just wrapping up now, and I'm so excited to meet all of the folks who are going to be coming in this next cycle. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to see who comes through and who grows and who puts their big magic out there as well. Thank you for the work that you're doing. There's so many people out there who are amazing at what they do, but unsafe in the idea of business. And, you have to be able to have a business to do your craft most of the time. So if you can feel really safe and confident in that world, then you can let all of your, professional magic out there into the world. And this world needs it right now. So, thank you, Kat, for creating this container so that we can just keep, all this
Yeah,
beauty
absolutely.
that exists
Before
in the
you log
world.
off, will
It
you
keeps
please
growing.
share how folks can find you and your work? Because I think that anybody who has questions about their health when it comes to your menstruating body or when it comes to a body that's wanting to conceive, um, like they just need to just hang out with you and do work with you. So just drop in where people can find you.
Yeah, my online business is called Root Care, and you can find me on Instagram at Root Care with a little underscore at the end. And my website is rachelroot.com. I really want to try to share this beautiful knowledge that have the privilege of having access to for the last 15 years. So I do offer a free 20-minute consultation. I can't really like give you medical advice on it, but I'd love if you share my story. I can definitely point you in the right direction, help bring some clarity around what you're going through, and just, offer some support in any way that I can. So if you're out there and you're struggling with something and you just need somebody to talk to about it, that is free on my website. And otherwise, you're super welcome to work with me one on one in my 6-month coaching program. There's
Yay!
an opening right now, and otherwise, you can be on the wait list.